Hello friends, happy December holiday time. Merry Christmas, happy Hanukkah, happy Saturnalia, whatever it is that you do out there, happy that thing. Happy satanic tree time, if that's what you're into. Whatever you're into, I hope you're enjoying it. Today, we are going to take a look at the recent hatred that the gun community feels for the Trijicon MRO. Y'all really don't like this optic. And we're going to take a look at why that is. Is it unfounded hate? Is it completely unfounded? Are y'all just way off on this? Let's take a look and see. Because it's rare that I encounter a device that y'all just hate quite this much. So this should be kind of interesting. Let's dive into it. Tonight we're going to talk about the most reviled thing in all of the gun internet. Something so evil, so heinous, so technologically inferior, so stupid, and so uncool, it looks as though it was crapped out onto this earth from the very depths of the ARFCOM forums, a place so vile, they say the guy who invented dental insurance was born there. You've probably heard that this product is the worst. It's worse than 5 Disney Star Wars movies played back to back and then again in reverse order. It's worse than baked Lays. It's worse than people telling you long and pointless stories about their unremarkable children doing wholly unremarkable things. It's worse than people who buy those AR-15 lowers that have Spartan helmets and goddamn monster faces on them, like some kind of micro-penis arabesque that shows you not only that you have more money than sense, but you also have appalling taste for buying something that looks like Skeletor's codpiece and then thinking it's cool. You took that shit unironically to the range, showed it off to all your buddies like they'd think it was cool too. And that shows a lack of self-awareness and brain electrical activity that may indicate you need a full-time caretaker. No, this product is worse than that. It's worse than gluten-free bread. It's worse than someone whose job requires them to be called an Apple genius. It's worse than people who breed exotic animals. It's worse than people who talk about stopping power. And it's even worse than those dumb people who repeat the dumb shit that they read or hear online on forums or YouTube as fact. I am, of course, talking about the Trijicon MRO, at present the most reviled optic on all of gun YouTube. You've all heard of it, you know it, you're supposed to hate it, but only like 10% of you have actually used it. Y'all really don't like this optic. And you don't like people who like them. So what gives? Why do y'all idiots hate it so much? And are you right to hate it? The answer is, unlike your brainwaves, complicated, but I'll do my best. As I don't want this video to be much more than 30 minutes long, this will be condensed somewhat. Because of this, I will surely miss something. Also, the usual disclaimer, if you can't take a joke, you're probably going to want to skip this one. And, all the others that I've made. So, thanks. Just get the fuck out. So why do y'all hate this shit so much? Well, I don't know exactly how the MRO hate got started. Perhaps one can trace it all the way back to the initial reviews, which noted lens distortion, unusual tint, and parallax. But those murmurs kind of faded, and the optic was overwhelmingly successful. Somewhere around 89,000 units or so, Trijicon made a change to the MRO. Online folks claim that all kinds of changes were made then. So I called Trijicon and I asked. They said that just the lens was changed. The original lens supplier sent Trijicon lenses that were within spec, but folks didn't like them. This is a massive oversimplification because we're going to cover this in detail later, and I don't want to spoil the fun. But they changed the lenses, that's all. And I've got two of my MROs here to compare, an old one and a new one, so we can take a look and check out the differences for ourselves, which is always handy. For a few years, the MRO was so popular. I saw it everywhere. I purchased one somewhere along the way, and I loved it. It was an older model, bought new. Let's see which one of these is the older one. Can you even tell just looking at it? No? This is the new one. That's the old one. I was so impressed, I bought more of them. And if you're one of the 6 people who watch this channel, you know that I love optics, and I have a ton of optics. If I thought these sucked, I would have bought something else. But I like them. They work well, they're very durable, and the price is right. But then the HD MRO came out. And it was not good. No, indeed, it was not good. You can read about the problems online or watch a YouTube review or two. Or better yet, go try one of the fuckers yourself. That would be ideal. You'll be able to formulate a legitimately informed opinion if you just go do it for yourself. And maybe this caused the reputation of the classic standard MRO to suffer. Suddenly, there were several videos besmirching the good name of the Trijicon MRO, and next thing you know, everybody on the internet hates it. I received many comments indicating that you dislike this optic, so let's choose one that best represents the lot of you. Our good friend Anthony feels that the MRO is so bad, such a poor choice, that it calls the whole of my credibility into question. Of course, this was after he watched a review in which I expressed that the AK is not my favorite platform. AK people have fragile egos and phalluses too small to be useful to anyone. I had wounded him. I understand. But the MRO seemed to inspire an almost irrational rage in Anthony. He also felt that my hairstyle discredited my thoughts and opinions. In fact, the presence of the MRO and my hair upset him so much that he had abandoned the use of punctuation almost entirely. I understand about my hair. I have the hair of a failed experimental Hemsworth, stunted and broken, left to die in the vat that grew him. But what had the MRO done? So I headed to Anthony's YouTube channel to see if he could shed some light on the problems with the MRO. Mr. Gonzalez's YouTube channel was of little help. He purchases Bushnell red dots and tank tops. This is a man who wears his hat backwards and talks all cool. He says sus and bro. He probably makes hand birds like this and says woo while he does it. I get it. The strongest sperm didn't make it to the egg. But where does the MRO-related rage come from? And is he right? Is the MRO that bad? We may never know the true origin of the pervasive MRO hate, but we can investigate the validity of that hate. Is this shit real? Fundamentally, or as I wrote in my script, fundanamentally, which is a great new word that I just invented and will continue to use, y'all seem to hate 4 things about the MRO, but you don't ever back them up. Those of you who actually use the optic and dislike it, and that's about 4 of you, 3 of whom have YouTube channels and have already made videos on the subject. The rest of you are just repeating the same bullshit you read or heard. So, point 1, you say that there is a lens distortion around the edges. 2, the MRO has higher parallax than other optics. 3, the lenses are more tinted than other optics. And 4, the MRO lens isn't a true 1-power optic and causes a slight magnification. So let's discuss these problems in detail and see if we can back any of this up. And let's use other optics to help us. Ultimately, it doesn't matter how the MRO performs on its own, does it? Instead, we care how it stacks up to other optics. All red dots, hell, all optics of any variety have problems. The question is, to what degree? And do these problems prevent the optic from performing on par with its peers? So when we discuss each problem in detail and ask, is this shit real? We'll look at other optics and ask if they have the same problems. For comparison, we'll use the holosun 403, the eotech EXPS 3-2, even though it's a holographic sight, the Trijicon RMR, and the venerable standard, the aimpoint T2. We're including the RMR, a competing Trijicon product, because it rarely seems to get any hate. Don't get me wrong, it has some problems, but for some reason you all seem to think about the RMR with a bit more emotional clarity and rationality, despite it having some of the same issues as the MRO and the other red dots here. Alright, so problem number 1, the MRO has lens distortion around the edges. Well, every fucking optic here has lens distortion. Except the eotech, that'll be a running theme, we'll mention a problem, and the eotech will be the only fucker without the problem. Holographic sights are awesome, but they are huge, heavy, and expensive. In other words, they have different problems. than the red dots do. Both of the MROs, old and new, the T2, the holosun, and the RMR have edge distortion. Hell, let's look at a few of my RMRs. Yep, the RMRs have the worst edge distortion. Yet, it never seems to bother any of us. Online, we only complain about the MRO. The aimpoint style optics, the T2 and the holosun 403, they have the least edge distortion. All red dots have edge distortion though. Why does it bother you? We overlook it on other red dots. Why do we care here with the MRO? Is the MRO catastrophically worse? No. It's medium. It has more edge distortion than the aimpoint style optics, but it also has a larger objective and a much larger field of view. Point 2. The MRO has more parallax than the other optics. That's true and untrue all at the same time. It's complicated. We've all read the famous parallax test online. The eotech has the least parallax, as far as I've noticed when shooting, though there is just a hair. Goddamn superior technology. It also weighs a fucking ton, though. But all red dots have parallax. That's a shift in point of impact when you move the dot to the far edge of the lens. On red dots, it happens to varying degrees. Aimpoints have very little. The MRO has quite a lot for a red dot. Why? Well, because the front objective lens is so large. When you have a huge objective lens like this one, as the dot moves closer to the edge of the lens, the more parallax you'll find. On the aimpoint and the holosun, the rear lens is roughly the same size as the objective lens. As a result, the field of view is smaller, and you can only get the dot so far to either side before you run out of lens. That keeps the parallax very low. But you also have less field of view, again. The optic makes up for this by favoring a position slightly farther up the rail, away from your eye, giving you a wider view of the target that way. You'll get toilet paper tube vision if it's too far back on the gun. The MRO has a huge objective lens. Looking through the optic, if you keep the dot within a circle the size of the objective lens on the T2, you'll experience similarly low parallax. Don't take my word for it, try it if you have an MRO. If you pull the dot way over to one side, you'll find a lot more parallax. If the T2 had an objective lens the same size, you'd find the same thing. And don't take my word for it, again, if you have an MRO, test it out. Are you really going to use the optic that way though? Jamming the dot all the way to one side? Well, you might. Shooting in an unconventional position, but you'd run into a problem with the T2 where you might not be able to see the dot at all in the same position because the objective lens is so much smaller. It's a give and a take. Both optics have problems, you just get to pick which problems you're okay with. We'll talk later about why I like that wide field of view so much, but I think that alone makes the MRO worthy of consideration. Alright, 3, the MRO lenses, especially the early ones, are more tinted than other optics. I mean, they all look pretty much the fucking same to me. Even the older MRO optic, which is supposedly horrifically tinted, just doesn't look that much different to me. None of these optics are obnoxiously tinted. None of them bother me. The image quality looks great on all of them. What gives? I just don't get it. Four, the MRO lens isn't a true one-power lens and magnifies the image slightly. This one is also true. When you look through the old MRO, the image is magnified just a hair. That should be fixed on the new optic. Oh hell, it's exactly the same. It's also magnified. In fact, I see no real difference between the old and new MROs besides the new one having slightly less tint. Well, at least our other optics here don't magnify the image. Oh, actually the T2 does. Huh. And the holosun does as well. And the RMR does it the worst. In fact, the RMR seems to have the worst image quality of any optic here. And all of my RMRs are like that. I have quite a few, just as I have quite a few MROs. The eotech doesn't have any magnification that I can perceive. If there is any, my eye just can't pick it up. Maybe yours can. All red dot lenses have some magnification, at least all the ones that I've looked through. Batches of lenses, usually made by a lens company rather than the optic manufacturer themselves, like the majority of manufactured items, they have tolerances. They must be within a range. And because of how hard it is to produce this sort of lens with absolutely zero magnification, this is within spec on all of these. All of these are within spec. For some people, the magnification causes a problem with their eyes, but only on the MRO. This seems to happen in a small minority of users, and many of them have vision problems anyway. If it happens to you, you just need to avoid the MRO. It's not the right optic for you. Here's what happens as far as I can tell. The huge objective lens and wide field of view, and the MRO's preference to sit closer to the eye, farther to the rear of the gun, it makes it so that your eye is filled with more of the mildly magnified image. To my eyes, that gives the image a sort of crisp, larger than life, realer than real sort of effect, but for some people, this makes them feel dizzy and shit gets blurry. It's much worse when these folks switch to their non-dominant eye. They can get headaches or feel queasy, in addition to the image looking like shit. You shouldn't have to deal with that. So if that's you, just don't use the MRO. That is definitely not the right optic for you. But that's the price of the much larger field of view. Every pro must have a con. There's no free lunch, as old white guys like to say. But does that make the MRO shitty? Well, no. Does it make the T2 shitty that it has a limited field of view? No, of course not. Just buy the right optic for the right gun in the right situation. So what does the MRO do well? Well, lots of things, in the same way that all of these optics have strengths and weaknesses. In fact, let's talk about that first. What do I use each of these for? Well, we've already established that the RMR has the worst image quality of the bunch. It has the most tint, the most magnification, the most edge distortion, the smallest field of view, if you can even call it that on an open optic, and the hardest to change battery. Yet, this is my favorite red dot. It used to be the MRO, but slowly I've come to prefer the RMR just a hair. The RMR might be my favorite, but the MRO is still my second favorite. Why? Well, the RMR is smaller and lighter, with a ton of mounting options available. Every pro has a con, and for me, smallness is most important in a red dot, especially on pistol caliber guns. I also use the RMR paired with optics that have more magnification, like my trusty ACOG. The RMR works great with this offset Arasaka mount. The RMR is an open optic, and that can be a problem sometimes. Outside, rain and dirt and shit can get in the emitter. Debris can get in there and rub around on the glass. All kinds of stuff can happen, but that's the price of it weighing so little. But keep in mind that handiness always comes at a price. I'm still trying out the holosun. Y'all have wanted me to get one for a long time, and you've heaped so much praise on this optic, I had to get one. You were right. For the money, it's exceptional. Is it the best optic I have? No. Is it as nice as the MRO or the T2? No, but it's excellent. I have this on my PSA AKP because I'm testing the durability of the holosun. This top rail has some flappy flip-flap movement in it, which sucks. I figured this wobbly, awful top rail will be a good durability test. The holosun has far more parallax than the T2. Internet anecdotes indicate that they're less durable. So far, I think it's actually quite durable, but I'm not sold on the AKP, so a $150 optic that is basically a clone of one of the best red dots, the T2, makes a lot of sense. The holosun definitely has a place, and I'm really glad that there's something this affordable on the market. The T2 is a joy to use. Aimpoint was the company that originally made me love optics back in 2001 or 2002. This red dot has a smaller field of view than the MRO, and it's on par with the holosun 403. It's a very precise optic. The most precise red dot that I have next to the eotech, which is actually a holographic sight rather than a traditional red dot. I love how crisp the T2's dot is, and the overall image is beautiful. I make pretty decent long shots with this red dot, and I keep it on my Beretta ARX for that reason. This gun has an excellent aftermarket trigger installed and a Modlite OKW, making it a great 1 to 300 yard gun. But the T2 has a narrower field of view. That aids it at distance, and it's still very lightweight and delightfully small. The price, however, is ridiculous. It's fucking bonkers. The T2 is better than the holosun, for sure, but it's not 5 times better, or whatever the price difference is. I got my holosun on sale, so yeah, I think the price difference may be just under 5 times. For most people, the holosun will make far more sense than the aimpoint, unless you're just crazy into optics like I am. The eotech EXPS32 isn't really a red dot, as we've said, holographic sight. The RMR is my favorite red dot, but the eotech offers my favorite image and is my favorite to use by far. But again, it's not my favorite optic. The image is the fastest, the field of view is huge, and the reticle is amazing, but it's big, heavy, and expensive. Way too heavy in my opinion, especially relative to the RMR. I tend to pair the eotech with a magnifier that's easily removable. Eotech is a great blend of distance and speed at close ranges paired with that magnifier. I love the setup. I just wish it didn't weigh a metric fuck ton, which is a derived unit, by the way. The weight is the only reason I don't own a few of these and have them stuck on everything. Overall, I've come to prefer the ACOG and RMR combo for the same sort of stuff, but that's a conversation for another day. So what about the MRO? I think it's important to compare it to all of its peers. For me, it's the all-arounder. It's very small, but not as small as the others. It's light, but not as light as the others. However, it has a better field of view, making it a little bit faster sometimes, and the price is lower than the others, with the exception of the holosun. I love the MRO. I love the MRO on lightweight rifle caliber pistols and pencil barrel rifles. Keeping the MRO at the rear of the top rail, the field of view is utterly huge, the biggest of any red dot that I've tried. Not only is it beneficial to keep the MRO near the back, but the optic seems to prefer that location. Now, thanks to folks like Grand Thumb, it's known that the optic works best back there. But I've been saying this the whole fucking time and pissing people off along the way. I'm not saying that you need to keep yours back there, but it works best for me. And many of you wish that I'd move the damn thing forward, including our good friend Soccer Stud 2009, the incumbent mayor of Cool Town. He seems to want to control what we do with our MROs. He probably tells women what to do and listens to Stained. Our other friend Steve S. respectfully asked us to move it, while Nexus 1, another bona fide cool dude, is distraught that I keep the MRO farther back than he does. In fact, he seems to have experienced so much emotional stress that he suffered some sort of previously unknown caps lock related medical crisis at the end there. I'm hoping that he and Soccer Stud can maybe get together and start some sort of saw the MRO farther back on the gun than they like it on their gun support group to work through these issues. And maybe they can recommend a few good penis enlargement services to one another. So if you like it forward, keep it forward, but it works great further back. Almost as far back as I can get it. That sounds sexual, and I guess it is. I love this optic. The field of view is huge with it back there. I can see the whole of my target area, and now my dot has all of this room to maneuver without running into that parallax zone. Farther up, there is less room to move that dot around, and the image is just less crisp up front. Everything exceptional about the MRO is removed when it's up there, and it enhances the edge distortion. I'm just not a fan, but if it works for you, it works. I end up choosing the MRO for guns that might be used for a variety of things out to about 200 yards or so. It works great up close and at reasonably short distances. So should you get the MRO? And final thoughts. As always, we're going to use the MRO to talk about the gun community as a whole. Yes, I chose these comments because they're funny. They were absolutely cherry-picked. Most people within the gun community are a lot like our friend Steve S. Yes, they need to spend less time worrying about what other motherfuckers are doing with their guns, but outside of being nosy motherfuckers, they have no ill intent. Within the gun community, a lot of us have a desperate need to tell others how they ought to do whatever it is they want to do. You want to critique their stance, their optics, chest rig, whatever. You are almost certainly not equipped with the expertise to offer that advice. And even after 20 years, I'm for damn sure not equipped or qualified to critique what someone else does. Perhaps the person that you're looking at made the choices that they did for a reason. Perhaps they know something that you don't know. When I talk to folks at the range and on the TGP Discord server, I find that others are a wealth of knowledge. You meet people who know so much about one specific part of the shooting discipline that you could study for 30 years and have a quarter of the knowledge and skill that they do. So listen to others and don't assume you have it figured out, because guess what? You fucking don't have it figured out. Your comments tell me that you don't. Y'all haven't mastered basic punctuation and the caps lock yet. I'm thinking red dots are a fucking long way off. Right? I'd focus on the essentials, like remembering to go to the toilet instead of peeing your pants, or that you require food in order to continue to live. Might want to throw breathing in there too. Smart people let other people do what they want, because you have to be smart enough to know what you don't know. When you assume you know, you look like an idiot. Past that, do your own research. Y'all believe the MRO is bad because you've never used one. with the exception of our friend Nexus One, who has apparently founded some sort of religious cult around the worship of his MRO that it might perch atop his AR-15 along the seam of his handguard and upper receiver, holding the two together in spiritual and tactical bliss for all time. Let the MRO bind us together as it binds the handguard and upper receiver. Join us in its love. Join us in zero issues. Amen. Wow, that was a long and ridiculous bit. So most of you have never used the MRO. You've watched a few YouTube videos, some of them made by folks who don't have much experience with a wide range of red dots and how they work. I see a lot of optics. I own a ton of optics, and they all have problems. But folks often struggle to objectively compare red dots. It really is hard. The only way to learn is to just use a ton of them. And I'm certainly still learning. There are another 250 red dots that I need to try. But you have to get real experience before you pass judgment on a product, or anything really. You need to know something to know what you're talking about. If you have a question about something, go try it. See for yourself. Don't spread misinformation. Spread genuine first-hand experience. So with all that said, should you buy the MRO? Maybe, but only if it suits your needs. That's what this video is really about. All of these optics are excellent, and there are a lot of other excellent optics that weren't part of this video. You can't go wrong with any of these, but you can choose the wrong one for the job. They all have their pros and cons, their positives and negatives. Problems and strong points. Choose accordingly. The holosun has its place, and so does the RMR. The holosun might not work so great on a Glock 19. The RMR is excellent there. Meanwhile, the MRO has an amazing field of view, but the optic itself is larger than the T2. And you sort of have to make sure that you don't get the dot somewhere where you are going to experience more parallax. The T2 is extremely expensive, but it does have the least parallax of any red dot here. At least that's what I've found in my own experience. So choose the optic you need. If you need a great optic that works up close and out to medium short distances with a huge field of view at a great price, the MRO is awesome. If you need the optic to be mounted farther forward, or you have eyes that don't work with the MRO, you probably want to look at something else. So choose what you need and don't let other people push you toward or away from something they haven't even tried. Get what you need to suit your preferences and needs. Okay, so we've taken a look at the MRO. Is it that bad? Well, I don't know. It seems to me like you're really going to have to buy one for yourself and try it out, right? It's the only way you're going to know. You need to get one and test it, because I found it to be very useful. You might hate it, however. And also worth noting, until you've tried something, can you really pass judgment on it? Can you just watch some YouTube videos and know how you actually feel about a thing? Probably not. So it's always best to get some first-hand experience before you make a decision, and before you start telling other people what they should or should not purchase. That's the key thing here. I think another thing that I've learned over the course of doing this video and some others recently is that the gun community needs to mind its own goddamn business. Y'all are constantly trying to tell other people what they need to do with their guns, and it just doesn't work that well. You don't know why someone is doing the things that they're doing, so you should just leave them be. Then maybe they know something that you don't know, and it might be worth talking to them about why they made the decisions that they did. But more than that, get some first-hand experience with this or any other optic that you have a question about, and decide for yourself whether you like it. Well, thanks for watching this awful mess. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season, and I will see you soon. Good night.